Freshwater eel. Freshwater eels, American eel and European eel, are the two most familiar examples, spend most of their adult lives in rivers, streams, and lakes, but they're catadromous, meaning they migrate out to the ocean specifically to spawn, which is the reverse of how salmon do it. Adults leave fresh water, swim out into the open Atlantic, spawn once in deep water, and then die, while the resulting larvae drift on ocean currents for months before transforming and moving into coastal rivers as juveniles. Their body is built for that dual life. Freshwater eels can absorb oxygen through their skin in addition to their gills, which lets them survive short periods out of water entirely, and there are documented cases of individuals moving overland through wet grass to reach a new pond or stream, using body undulation the same way a snake would. They're also capable of tolerating a wide range of salinities as they transition between the ocean and fresh water, with their kidneys and gills adjusting function depending on which environment they're in at the time. As adults, they're nocturnal predators, hunting fish, insects, and crustaceans mostly by scent rather than eyesight, and they can live for decades in fresh water before the hormonal changes that trigger their final migration to the ocean kick in, one of the longer maturation periods of any fish this size. Moray eel. Moray eels are almost entirely marine, living in cracks and crevices on coral reefs and rocky shorelines, and their most distinctive biological feature is a second, smaller set of jaws deep in the throat called pharyngeal jaws. Most fish rely on suction to pull prey into the throat, but a moray's narrow reef crevices make strong suction difficult, so instead, the pharyngeal jaws shoot forward inside the mouth and grab prey directly, then retract to pull it down the throat, a mechanism unique among vertebrates for actively capturing prey this way. They lack scales, and their skin is coated in a thick mucus layer that in some species contains toxins and helps protect against abrasion from constantly moving through tight rock and coral crevices. Their eyesight is relatively poor, so they rely heavily on smell to locate prey, fish, octopus, crustaceans, often hunting at night and spending daylight hours with just the head visible from a den, mouth opening and closing rhythmically, which isn't aggression, but simply how they pass water over their gills to breathe. Some moray species also hunt cooperatively with certain reef fish, most notably groupers, flushing prey out of crevices that the other predator can't reach, while the grouper catches anything that flees into open water, a rare example of interspecies hunting cooperation between two unrelated predators. Conger eel. Conger eels are larger and more heavily built than most true eels, with some species reaching well over 6 feet, and unlike morays, they're found in open water and soft sediment as much as reef structure, ranging from shallow coastal areas down to several hundred meters deep. Their jaws are lined with strong, blunt to sharp teeth depending on species, built for crushing crustaceans and gripping fish, rather than the more delicate prey capture morays specialize in, and their bite force scales up considerably with their larger body size. Like most true eels, they lack scales, relying instead on a mucus-covered skin, and their dorsal and anal fins run continuously around a reduced tail fin, giving them a smooth, unbroken outline that helps with efficient swimming through open water rather than just squeezing through crevices. Conger eels are also generally solitary and territorial, occupying a den among rocks or wreckage that an individual may use for extended periods, emerging at night to actively hunt rather than ambushing from the entrance, the way a moray typically does. Their growth rate and maximum size vary enormously with water temperature and food availability, which is part of why populations in different regions can show dramatically different average sizes even within the same species. That solitary, territorial life ends the same way a freshwater eel's does, even though conger eels never leave the ocean to get there. As they approach maturity, congers undergo dramatic physical changes. The digestive system degrades, teeth can be lost, and the body redirects most of its resources into developing gonads instead of maintaining the organs needed to keep feeding. They then migrate to specific deep water areas to spawn a single time before dying shortly afterward. It's the same one-shot reproductive strategy freshwater eels use, arrived at independently by a species that spends its entire life in salt water. Garden eel. Garden eels represent one of the more unusual lifestyles among true eels. They live in dense colonies, each individual anchored permanently in its own burrow, in sandy or silty seafloor, with only the front 2/3 of the body extended into the water column at any time. They feed on plankton drifting past in the current, facing into the flow with their body angled to intercept food particles, and they almost never fully leave their burrow, retreating tail first at the first sign of a threat, which is why colonies can look like a field of grass swaying in the the current one moment and empty sand the next, as every individual disappears at once. That burrow is excavated by the eel itself, using a hardened, pointed tail tip to drill into the substrate, and the burrow wall is reinforced with mucus secretions that keep the surrounding sand from collapsing. Because each individual is essentially fixed in place, mating in garden eels happens without either eel ever fully leaving its burrow. Neighboring individuals in a colony extend far enough to bring their bodies into contact for reproduction, then retreat back to their separate, permanent positions. That sedentary lifestyle is close to the opposite of the actively roaming, den-switching behavior seen in most other true eels. Snipe eel. Snipe eels live in deep, open water, generally below a few hundred meters, and their most obvious feature is a pair of long, thin jaws that curve away from each other at the tip rather than meeting flush, the way a normal jaw does, giving the whole head a scissor-like or bird beak silhouette. That unusual jaw shape is built around one very specific prey capture method. Snipe eels feed mainly on the antennae of small deep-sea crustaceans, particularly copepods, using tiny backward-curving teeth lining the jaws to snag and hold on to individual antennae, rather than engulfing whole prey items the way most predators do. The jaws stay slightly open at all times because of that curvature, which limits how large a single prey item can actually be. Keeping the species locked into a diet of small, delicate targets its jaws are precisely shaped to handle. Their bodies are extremely elongated and thin, often reaching several feet in length while weighing very little. And like a lot of deep-sea animals, their skeleton and muscle mass are reduced compared to a shallow water fish of similar length, trading strength for buoyancy and energy efficiency in an environment where food is scarce and swimming fast isn't usually necessary. Gulper eel. The gulper eel, sometimes called the pelican eel because of its resemblance to that bird's pouch, lives in deep water and is built almost entirely around one adaptation, a mouth and stomach capable of expanding dramatically to accommodate prey much larger than the eel's own head. Its lower jaw is enormous relative to its narrow body, hinged wide enough to engulf prey nearly as large as the eel itself, and the stomach lining is elastic enough to stretch considerably to accommodate a large meal, a useful trait in deep water, where encountering prey at all can be rare enough that an individual needs to make the most of every opportunity rather than count on regular feeding. The rest of the body is comparatively minimal: small eyes, reduced muscle mass, a thin whip-like tail, reflecting how little energy is available to spend on anything beyond feeding efficiency and basic movement at that depth. Many individuals also have a light-producing organ at the tip of the tail, thought to function as a lure, drawing curious prey close enough for the oversized mouth to engulf them, a passive hunting strategy suited to an environment where actively chasing prey would cost more energy than it's worth. Electric eel. The electric eel isn't a true eel at all. It belongs to a different order of fish entirely, and only got the name because of its elongated, eel-like body shape, which evolved independently, rather than through any close relation to the anguilliforms covered so far. Its defining feature is a set of specialized electric organs running along most of the length of its body, made up of thousands of modified muscle cells called electrocytes, stacked in series like individual batteries wired together. Most of the time, those organs fire weak, continuous pulses used almost like sonar, an electric field the fish can use to sense objects, prey, and obstacles around it in dark or murky water where eyesight isn't much use, a technique called electrolocation. When it's actually attacking or defending itself, the eel can instead fire all of those same cells simultaneously, producing a single strong discharge powerful enough to stun prey or drive off a threat outright. The same electrical system doing two completely different jobs depending on how it's fired. They breathe air directly at the surface, using richly vascularized tissue in the mouth, which lets them survive in oxygen-poor water, where many other fish would struggle, and they hunt mostly at night, using those short-range sensing pulses to locate prey before committing to an attack, then following with the stronger discharge at close range to immobilize it. Wolf eel. The wolf eel is another non-true eel, actually a type of wolfish, more closely related to blennies than to any anguilliform species, sharing only the elongated, tapering body shape that makes it visually resemble an eel at a glance. It lives in the North Pacific, typically occupying a den in rocky reef structure that a mated pair will use for years at a time. And unlike most eel-shaped fish, wolf eels are largely monogamous, with both parents taking turns guarding a mass of eggs coiled around the female's body inside the den for months until they hatch. That extended, shared parental investment is unusual among fish generally, and stands out even more against the mostly solitary, non-parental life histories of the true eels covered earlier. Its head and jaw are built for crushing rather than piercing, with strong, blunt teeth adapted for cracking open the shells of sea urchins, crabs, and clams, a hard prey diet that most other eel-shaped predators aren't equipped to handle. Juveniles look strikingly different from adults, with a more slender body and mottled orange coloration, suited to drifting in open water before settling into the reef-dwelling, den-bound lifestyle that defines the species as an adult.